Welcome to Louisiana Humanities Center. My name is Brian Boyles. We are thrilled to have you all here tonight for what we think is an extremely important conversation. If you have not been here before, we do programs like this at least quarterly, often monthly. There is a mailing list that you may have signed on your way in. Please do make sure you sign it if you haven't. We will be continuing this particular conversation in the future online, but we will also be hosting other events, and we'd love to see all of you here. Before I forget, do turn off your cell phone. This is a time to eat meatballs, but not to take to-go orders. I should thank Louisiana Pizza Kitchen. You should all thank them as well. This is quite generous of them.
Yeah. Thank you.
I also want to thank Zack Smith Photography, who really hatched this idea. We'll do more applauding of Zack later, but really this is his baby, and I'm just glad to be here and be with you all to help bring it out. I also want to thank my colleagues, Suzanne McClellan, Denise Faulkner-Edwards, Romy Mariano, and Chris Robert, who have done a lot to get us to this point and get us every issue to have a magazine out. This is produced by Louisiana Cultural Vistas. There are copies of old issues around on the seats that really showcase the commitment we've had to photography in New Orleans and Louisiana for 25 years. From Michael P. Smith to Keith Calhoun and Shonda McCormick to Sidney Bird, all the way up to people like Zack Smith. This magazine has been committed to good art dedicated to documenting Louisiana and New Orleans. We do, however, know this is an ongoing conversation. We are in a place where we want to listen as a magazine and as a community to what both sides of the lens think. And I think that Zack has put together a really esteemed panel to do this, and certainly we'll be trying to continue this conversation however we have. Please do look inside those magazines. There's a subscription card. Some of those magazines are so old you could get a subscription for $16 rather than the $20. We would honor that. We would honor you. We would deliver 4 issues a year, and we think we have a lot of good things going on. You can see that Zack was the cover of the previous issue. The great Philip Gould is on the cover of the current issue. Both of them are currently sold out. That's a good thing. That's another reason why you should get in now, and you will get yours the next time around. The way this is going to work, I'm going to introduce these folks who I'm honored to share a stage with, talk a little bit about this issue of culture of collaboration and capture and photography and the culture of New Orleans and how to perhaps improve on that relationship. We will then, though, turn this over to a community conversation. We want to hear from you. More than anything, we would like to hear suggestions for how the future might work, how we as a city, as a state, might better preserve our culture, and also to the benefit of culture bearers, deliver their message and have everybody rise in this great boat that hopefully will not have to float again anytime soon. To do that, when we do get to the question and answers, I would, 1, try and make it a question or posit an answer to what we might do, and 2, speak into that microphone there. I think it's pretty clear this thing is being documented. I think we are currently live streaming it on several different platforms. People in Switzerland are very concerned with Louisiana and want to know what you all think. Overall, I think that this city has probably been photographed and in front of the lens more than any other place in America in the last 10 years. That's why it's an important conversation. In the humanities, we believe that no conversation is necessarily over, that we should continue it and continue to inspect issues like this, and for that reason, we try and document it. We will have a transcript and video up on knowlouisiana.org, hopefully within a week or so, and we hope that you'll continue to follow us, to tweet with us, and to tell us what you think, because we know there's room for improvement. We also know that the reason we're having this conversation is because New Orleans is an extremely complex place. It's a place that attracts generalizations, simplifications, but always belies them, always resists them. And I think the people we have with us tonight are people that can speak to that complexity and perhaps how we'll handle it better in the future. So now I'm going to read some biographies, and then we'll get on with it. Big Chief Juan Pardo and the Golden Comanche Mardi Gras Indians are an electrifying display of culture that date back 200 years in New Orleans. If you haven't checked out his new album, I highly, highly recommend it. The influences of the band are certainly the Meters, Willie T, the Neville Brothers, the many ways we see Mardi Gras Indian music crossing over into pop music, to the funk of New Orleans, and really reaching the entire globe. He is also recorded with many bands such as Galactic, the 101 Runners, Rhythm Conspiracy, and has shared the stage with people like Patti LaBelle, Cyril Neville, Anders Osborne, Trombone Shorty, and Dr. John, just to name a few. Please give it up for Big Chief Juan Pardo. Zack Smith is a fine gentleman and an artistic and commercial photographer who's been documenting the social, musical, and cultural landscape of Louisiana for more than 15 years. His work has appeared in numerous ad campaigns, and he's done work for the Louisiana Public Health Institute, the New Orleans Tourism and Marketing Commission, Getty Images, Nike, Russell Simmons, Yamaha, St. Charles Vision, Crew to Optic, Dirty Coast, and Sopo. He's really a constant on the New Orleans music scene. If you haven't been at a festival and seen Zack, you were probably focused too much on the music, which is fine. He's also an official photographer, a staff photographer for French Quarter Festival. He was named Best Music Photographer from Offbeat in 2009, has twice been voted one of New Orleans' best photographers by Gambit, and was in the 2008 40 Under 40 list for Gambit. Please, my partner, Zack Smith. Eric Waters has been a professional photographer for more than 30 years. He studied under the tutelage of the late Marion Porter, a very well-known and respected Black New Orleans photographer and owner of Porter's Photo News. Through that relationship, he was taught to really see the world around him in a way that he had not noticed before, and it's that relationship that built the foundation for his future in photography. He's best known for capturing the vibrant and energetic scenes of the second line and the New Orleans Mardi Gras Indian. We saw some of the photos if you walked in that Eric has done. You've seen them in museums and in magazines for years. Really one of the most respected photographers we have when it comes to street culture, Mr. Eric Waters. Yeah. And Boyce Monet, who I said I've known from way, way, way back.
You have known me from way back.
Is a storyteller who uses her music to power an array of social-minded businesses and creative enterprises. She's appeared as a performer at L'Olympia in Paris, at the Montreal Jazz Festival, and has co-owned and operated Feather Perm Records, a boutique media production company called Go Ahead Media, and in recent years, her work in the producer, director, cinematographer's seat has spurred several short documentaries about cultural and community empowerment within New Orleans, with spotlights on positive role models, burgeoning artists, and grassroots organizations. Please welcome Boyce. One of the reasons we want to stage this conversation right now is we're sort of entering into festival season. We just came off really that singularly New Orleans weekend where we have St. Joseph's Night, we have Super Sunday, and we have Tyler Perry. No one else has all three of those things in one weekend. Lots of opportunities for photography, for doing it right, for doing it wrong. Traditions that have gone on for a long time. I want to start, Eric, with you, because you are the person who can speak to maybe what it was like 20, 30 years ago. You were in town for Super Sunday. Were you also in town for St. Joseph's Night as well?
Yeah, but it rained.
True enough.
I was in a couple of the Mardi Gras. I was in one Mardi Gras Indian's house, and I was over at Bullets with hard-head hunters. They were gearing up. They were going to come out regardless. But I didn't stick around for that because I didn't want my camera to get wet. But anyway, yes, I've been around for a minute.
Boyce, do you want to hand him the microphone as well? I guess my question for you was, when you were out there for Super Sunday, when the weather was really, really good, how does it look as a photographer to you, as opposed to what it looked like maybe when you started 30 years ago? The community that's around Indians, the people that are out there shooting, and how does that impact the way you maybe approach photography and really to get to the heart of this matter of moving in a certain direction when it comes to documenting this culture?
Well, it's very chaotic now in the streets. There are a lot of people who are shooting with their iPhones, their iPads, point-and-shoot cameras. There's nothing wrong with that, and I'm the kind of photographer that I think that everybody's photo is important to them, and as mine are to me, whether you're shooting with an iPhone, an iPad, point-and-shoot camera, what have you. What I wanted to speak on was gratitude and respect. Back in the day when I was shooting, there was a lot of respect for the culture, and there was a lot of gratitude that someone in the culture allowed you to take their picture. And I don't see that now. I see, and I'd like to pose a question to all the photographers in the audience, is how would you approach Elton John or what's her name? Escapes me right now. Beyonce, or someone of that ilk, right? You wouldn't just run up in their face and take a picture. Or if someone is with them, tell them to get out the way so that you can take their picture. And I don't see that respect for the Mardi Gras Indian culture, nor the second line bands, right? All we see as photographers is that every Sunday there's something happening, there's something to be photographed in the culture, right? But what photographers need to do and should do is pay respect. Honor those persons, like Chief here, Chief over there. Honor them like you would Elton John. These guys are our celebrities, right? These are our Elton Johns and Beyoncés. These are our Beatles, you know. And we should show them the same respect that we would show somebody of that ilk. New Orleans is the only cultural venue in the contiguous United States. The only other one that comes close in terms of African retentive culture as existing in New Orleans is the Gullah Geechee culture off the coast of South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. So we have an embarrassment of riches here in New Orleans. Every Sunday during the second line season, we're able to photograph. We're able to go out there and hear concerts in the street. And in terms of the Mardi Gras Indians, these guys are artists. They are walking, performing sculpture. And we should pay that respect to them because it takes these guys 3,500 to 5,000 hours every year and they create a new suit. A lot of people don't even know that are taking pictures that they should refer to that as suits, not costumes. You know, so if you're gonna photograph a culture, try to get to know the culture and try to get to know the people in the culture.
I want to circle back in a little bit to how people would show that respect, but I wanted to ask you: do you think what does drive that rush to sort of get in someone's face? You know, what do you think has been lost? Maybe is it a technical thing? Is it the availability of more cameras? Is it more people out there trying to take cameras? Competition? What got lost along the way that folks feel this need to maybe invade that space without the level of respect maybe that you saw years ago?
A sense of entitlement and privilege. The color of photographers have changed, and there's just no respect. They feel that they can just step up and take a photo. And my thing is that I don't have any problem because of the way I carry. I like to think because of the way I carry myself. And a lady was shooting with an iPhone, and I tried to get out of her way. She said, "Oh no, you're the photographer. No, your picture is just as important as mine. You're not getting in my way, and I don't want to get in your way."
Right.
Now I'm very forceful if someone does get in my way. Right? And I've had that happen on several occasions, and of course I dealt with it accordingly. But people see my camera, and like Zack is out there with his camera, that's the photographer. But no, everybody wants to be a photographer, right? And I have no problems with that. You know, it's pictures they're going to share online and Facebook and all. I don't do that with my images. And the other thing is to give back. The least you can do, if I shoot this gentleman over here, shoot his picture, Dow Edwards, if I shoot his picture, I want to give him a picture. If he wants a picture, he's called me and Eric, come take these pictures, right? I want to give him a picture. I give all of these guys that I take pictures of a card. And sometimes when I'm in the street, they'll say, "Eric, where's my picture?" I said, "Did you call me?" "Well, no, but where's my picture?" I said, "Well, if you look on my back, there's a file cabinet. And if you look under your name, you can access your picture, right?" And they just start laughing and keep on walking. But I try to encourage guys to give me a call. The least I can do is at least give you a photograph. I'm not talking about 8x10 either. that was printed at Costco's. I'm not, I'm talking about something that they can be proud of. Yeah.
Thank you. Hey, Chief Juan, I wanted to ask you kind of a similar question. When you step out the door on Mardi Gras, who do you see? And specifically when it comes to photographers, how do you respond to that particular type of attention when you are doing something that, as you've said, is 200 years deep in its tradition, that has a meaning much more than simply being documented, but is obviously under the spotlight the minute you head out that day?
I just wanted to.
Well, maybe it's probably different across the city within itself. Because if you ask me that question, usually if he's coming out, first photographer I see is Zack.
Yeah.
And probably going to be the only one if I so choose, which is normally what I do. For me, it's different now, kind of to get, I guess, a good meat to the question you were asking the other gentleman about the difference in the time. What I can add to it from the cultural side is there's also a different shared respect that we issue now that wasn't issued back when he started. You see, because we live in a certain time. If you look at it, when Mardi Gras was going on back in the day, there weren't that many people concerned with what we were doing, and neither were the officers, because they wanted to pretend that they were patrolling the quarter so they could be hanging out and enjoying Mardi Gras at the same time. So there probably wasn't even a cop around to really bother you. So that being said, if you were in the way of a meet between two Indians with that lens, it probably landed in a yard somewhere. And so what photographers need to understand is that we are giving you a very extreme courtesy by not helping you put that $3,000 camera in Hunter's Field somewhere. And what I would like to say, that I kind of hang on to that tradition myself. I don't mind the photographers, I don't mind the pictures, but understand what we're doing is spiritual. And when you interrupt the spirit, you will get a reaction. Because when I do it, I am extremely intense, I am very serious. That year of my life, I'm wearing it. So you're dealing with that whole year. I'm coming up the street with it. And what I like about, reason why I say it, I see Zack's approach has always been the same. It has always been courteous. It has always been asked. And he's always worked with me in a situation. So what I see different now is, like I was saying, when I come out now, it's like he was talking about, there's iPhones and there's cameras everywhere. And other than my sister, who does photography as well, and my sister-in-law, she just graduated from photography school, I don't invite that in. For instance, I don't even, like a lot of guys now, because there's also fame and notoriety in culture now. So a lot of guys invite that into their home in the sense of the assembly and all of that. And Zack and I talk about it. And he asked, but it's not something I do. That's my jewel. Now my sister has those pictures. We have them in the family. We point at them and we talk about them. But that's that cultural thing that I'm gonna hold on to, because it's what we do as a tribe, as a family, And there's nothing wrong with getting those photos. If someone wants that to happen, that's fine. But be sure to ask. Don't knock on the door one day with Popeye's chicken and, hey Chief, how you doing? And you got a $3,000 camera in your backpack and you just ease it out and like, oh man, let me take a few pictures of you guys and slide out the door with generations of history.
This has happened.
Yeah, that's absolutely happened. And that's where the difference happens. Is what's going on now. Wherein, like he was saying, he'd have been at the house anyway. That's how he'd have got his shot, because he's there anyway, and you want him there. You can build those relationships with us. It's not that hard. That's how Zack and I created our relationship. It's just communicating, understanding that guy he can show you on this arm patch what month it was, who had a baby, if he was sick. He's wearing all of that. So when you stop to think about it, it's not a costume. This is 1 year of a man's life that he's wearing, and it's heavy. So respect his space and be courteous. And the shot, when you ask, well, what's everybody? Why did everybody wants the shot? I got the shot. That's what I hear. I gotta get the shot. The shot. There is no such thing as the shot. The shot is yours. When you shoot it, that's the shot. There are sweet spots in it, but that sweet spot is good for you. And luckily, if it's real good, then it'll captivate others who come to a gallery to see it. Then it becomes the shot. But at that moment, we're in motion. You never catch it all. Video can't catch it all. I can show you videos now. You know how many cameras you would need to capture what we're doing? It doesn't exist. First, you need one on the ground, constantly shooting up. When two chiefs come together and we close in, you got a guy sticking a lens in there trying to get that. That's a conversation that has nothing to do with you or your lens. You know, so that's what I would ask a photographer to do, to find your way to be in there. And if you're lucky enough to build a relationship, then you get the shot Zack can get. Because once we know that you have no ill will, you have no ill intent, and you're working with us and things come your way and you give us that call, hey Chief, they're looking for this, you know, hey, you're my guy, hey, talk to them, see what it's about. When you share that type of relationship with the culture, then you get invited in, and then it's not as hard for you to get that shot. Because if Zack got in there on something, I can turn and not miss a beat, because that's Zack, and keep it moving, you know. But when you see Zack there, don't think that that's your opportunity, it's all good. No, that guy's probably, if he's that close, he's put the relationship together to be where he is. So that's something that we need to make sure that we understand and try to maintain the culture of integrity, you know, as a photographer. You know, to understand you got that big lens anyway. Why does it need to be right here? It's this big, it's that long, I've seen it. You know, I'm like, okay, you have an expensive camera, I get it. You know, and there's probably tons of shots of the palm of my hand.
Yeah.
You know, I promise you, if shots of Golden Comanche are far in between, you know, and there's a reason for that. My wild man, when I say clear a hole, I really mean that. And I'm not taking nothing from any other tribe, but we're not walking around, we're not stepping around, we're doing none of this. And it's not it's not to in any we come off as this bad guy or to injure anyone. You know, that's not the goal here. But it's a warrior culture. And these guys are doing battle through song, dance, art, the whole 9 yards. And there's energy levels going. And for goodness sakes, there's drums that are channeling to that energy that, man, you can't necessarily bottle that up. And you can't just get in there and, all right, I want to get here. And these two guys are going at it. You're in the middle of a feud. You don't know what's going on there. So it's not even wise, you know. And then what happens is you get someone, and the next thing you know, it becomes a huge issue. Then we end up in the Times-Picayune. Oh, the Indians are doing this, and they're treating people. No, what happened?
Let me ask about that, because what seems to drive that need to have a shot is, one, there's an artistic content to what you do that someone wants to capture. They want to be able to do it, and in some ways it's a shortcut to creating something great because you're photographing something great, right? There's been more of that, I think we've said, the number of cameras over the last 10 years. Treme brought Mardi Gras Indians in one form or another to HBO viewers all around the continent. What about the tradition still isn't being expressed by those shots, and how could a photographer better do that? And by that I mean there's such a complexity and a long tradition that's going on. A photograph is really of a moment, you know. What do you think is still not kind of known about the culture? And I think what's interesting about the culture is not everything has to be known about it. It's not created for an external audience, but there is this external audience that's constantly hungry for it. What are they missing aside from just respect for what you do?
a great shot that photographers miss is because, for one, it's hard work. You gotta really stop and think about it. And that's not the picture of the Indian's face at all. You can't do it anymore because the new housing developments aren't like the old ones with the high balcony. But that shot, that's the best shot for me. I've seen them from back in the days when when the housing development was what it was, but you don't get that anymore. And I would tell a photographer, get on Second and Drive or somewhere and get high. And you're out of the way and shoot that shot. You got all of these crowns coming up the street. You got this long shot. When the chief, first of all, the way our crown configuration is, the first thing we're gonna do in pride is cock back. You will never get that shot on that ground.
Right.
But if you happen to be that photographer that's smart enough to get elevated, stay away from the crowd, use the long lens that you have, get back from the distance, and get up and get that shot. That what we call morning glory. That's the shot.
Yeah. I'm writing too.
You see, but
Morning
writing that
glory.
down.
but that's not what But that's what I'm saying.
That's a harder thing to do.
That's a harder thing to do. Exactly. So that running in, I'm gonna get in.
Right.
It's tons of those shots gonna be around. If I'm a photographer, I don't want that shot. Another great shot, the lower extremity of us in motion. If you caught, for instance, I have an apron where I have Indians dancing in fire, and when I'm constantly rolling me, you catch them feet and I'm in the same posture as that guy on the front apron beaded, and you got just this. That's the shot. But you're not in the way because you're down here, while everybody else is up there in my face. You getting that shot. And it's thinking outside of the box. It's really sitting down and saying, it's just like any development or advertising firm. What are they doing and what can I do that they're missing? And photographers should just stop and think about that for a minute and find a way to stay out of the traffic of all the other guys. And it's shots like that. Those are the moments. Zack's gotten something. I can tell you. There's one, just like he was saying, in my house that sits on the wall, and it's my wife. She's pregnant with my daughter. My firstborn. He's this first time he's masking, and the thing about it, my daughter masked. So you have this belly picture, the belly out, and she's fixing the crown on my son, and there's my daughter who he's got the whole story that goes from before she was even here, she was out there amongst, she was hearing the rhythms, and she was in there dancing, and then she's here in the world, and the first time she put a suit on, but see, to get that jewel, you're gonna have to respect the coach. You're gonna have to build that relationship. That's as soon as you walk in my house and sit down, that picture is right there. And I didn't have to do anything
Right.
but pick it up from Zack.
Right.
So that's something that, like I said, and I would tell people, try to break it up. If you're gonna shoot photography in the daytime, like Mardi Gras Day, then when you go to St. Joseph night, don't shoot. Just go out.
Yeah. Right, and get that experience.
And get the
without the
experience
camera. That's interesting.
without the camera.
Yeah.
Because then you're going to hear things, you're going to hear conversations, you're going to get an understanding, you're going to hear people who live in the community talking about the culture, so then you're going to learn what's going on.
That's great advice. Yeah.
So that way when you come back to it the next time you shoot, say a Super Sunday or whatever that is, you got a better understanding. You got a chance to do your shoot, and then you got a chance to learn something. So that following year when you come back, you're a lot more educated than the guy who just flew in from Connecticut.
No disrespect to Connecticut.
No disrespect to
Let me
Connecticut.
just add one
Go ahead,
thing
sure.
to what he's talking about in terms of understanding the culture in which you're shooting. Photographers that shoot in the street and shoot the Mardi Gras Indians should go to Indian practice. They will see the ritual of how these guys meet each other. Nobody but a chief can meet a chief. It's respect, and they practice every Sunday. So you'd have to be a fool to try to step in between two chiefs that are meeting each other when people from the other tribe can't meet that chief. So it's understanding the culture, knowing the culture, and respecting the culture, and they have a better appreciation of taking the photos.
And I think this is fascinating because there's so many things around the world that someone could parachute in probably and get a good shot of, but it's the level of complexity that's involved in this tradition that requires that kind of knowledge and that kind of patience to actually take something that's worth actually seeing. And that responsibility, I think, is definitely the question that we want to hit on here.
Well, it goes back to what he said. You got to work for it. You got to work at it.
Right.
You know, you just don't show up on Mardi Gras Day. You don't just show up on Super Sunday and take pictures.
Mm-hmm.
You participate. I mean, you go and observe the culture in the ballrooms on Sunday. Learn the culture, learn the ritual. They got language, they got signage, they got music. It's more than just that masking and sewing. I call it the power of needle and thread. That's so profound to me, that what they do with a needle and thread is amazing.
Voice as a musician, but also someone who's worked in film as a cinematographer. What kind of consent do you think is needed there when it comes to what a musician wants to convey, what a culture bearer wants to convey, and maybe as someone who's also stood on the other side of the lens, how you enter into that negotiation, and maybe some of your experiences with that, and what can work, and maybe some also what doesn't work sometimes in that relationship.
Yeah, because I am an artist that wears multiple hats, I've had two very unique experiences in relationship to Mardi Gras Indians, the Indian culture. A couple of years ago, my production company was contracted to film Yellow Pocahontas tribe, Mardi Gras Day, and then for St. Joseph's Night. We were contracted by an organization out of Oakland that had granted grant money, I guess, to the tribe. And I was referred word of mouth. It was a nice contract. But before I could say yes, I had to make direct contact with the chief of Yellow Pocahontas and get clearance from him first, what was okay, regardless of what the organization who was hiring me wanted. And I also explained that to the organization. I let them know that culturally it was a very sensitive subject, and that within my community I had to reach out to this tribe direct and get an okay from them, and then I could give them a quote on what I would be able to film and shoot. When I did reach out to the chief, one of the first points that I made was that whatever I shot, they would have first access to, and to be able to use in whatever way they saw fit. I also made that part of the contract with the people that hired me. In terms of music, I feel like I approach it with the same sensitivity, and maybe it's because my background is in photography and media arts. I started as a street photographer. So I just believe that there's a certain sensitivity and empathy that you need to have with your subjects, and a conversation and line of communication that needs to be open with your subjects to even get the types of shots that I like to get. And so with my next album, I have a feature from Christian Scott, who is an internationally known jazz musician, but is also is entrenched in the Indian culture. He's a nephew of Donald Harrison. He's also a spy boy himself. And I feel like I approached Christian, he's a good friend of mine, but I approached him with the same sensitivity that I approached Chief Shaka Zulu. I told him my intention behind the track. For me, I represent New Orleans as an ambassador around the world, and so New Orleans is in me in a certain way that I like to share with the world. And I feel like it's a part of New Orleans that the rest of the world doesn't get to see. So my conversation with Christian was, again, very direct and clear. My aim was to create a track that almost had a dirge feel to it, that brought people into our culture around funerals and celebrating a life. He totally understood. I think he has the same mission as an artist in terms of being an ambassador. And then we worked together, but I also made him privy every step of the process. It wasn't like Christian come in, play horns, and then I'm gonna send you a track. It's like, I started mixing it. Here's phase one of the mix. What do you think? You know, because for me, this is the first time I'm mixing horns. And I want to make sure that none of his art gets compromised in that process. And I think that if you approach people like that, if you understand that you aren't just pulling from it to exploit it, you are pulling from it to share it, to open up a dialogue, and to really let people know how culturally rich this city is, you get a whole different relationship. But you know, I'm also somebody who's very entrenched in the community. So when this company contracted me out of Oakland, everybody, basically 3 out of the 4 people they wanted me to shoot were a phone call away. And that's also something that's very special about this city. If you're new here, you know, everybody knows each other. And I think that that's something that's being lost post-Katrina as people have scattered. You know, usually people are a phone call away, a relative away, and it makes a big difference when you can pick up a phone and contact someone direct, and they actually get to meet the human in you before they meet the artist in you who's in need of something from them. It changes the nature of your relationship from the jump. And you know, it's just allowed for me to continue making, I feel, quality art. It's given the tribe access to footage that they've never had. To piggyback off what you said, sorry. I'm supposed to be picking up my notes.
Everybody remember.
My ringer was off, that's just an alarm, sorry. But to piggyback off what you said earlier, my crew was in the home of the chief when it started raining Mardi Gras Day, and they didn't go out that day. But what ended up happening was, it went down in his living room, right? And there's certain footage that we were able to catch because we had been there since 5 in the morning. We were beating with them. We were, you know, I won't say it, but we was adding a little glue. You know, but we were there with them. And so when...
A lot of knowing laughter in this room. A lot of knowing laughter.
But because I think my thoughts are, because I had opened with a conversation prior to showing up day of shoot, because we were there 4 a.m. Mardi Gras Day, putting in, not just standing there waiting to get a shot, but helping, you know, which is a big part of the culture of this community, you know, feeding people. At some point I'm sweating over a stove cooking, because these men, they working hard. They need to eat. You know, I'm holding the camera. I could put it down for a second, throw it on a tripod, go make some food. So because we were there, we were able to get something that I've never seen personally, and that they've never seen personally. And so I remember looking over the raw footage like, oh, I can't believe I got this. And thinking like, oh, and then really feeling a sense of pressure about what was gonna make final cut for a 5-minute video. You know, and so yeah, I think that if you approach it with some sensitivity, you know, people here are down to earth. What you see is what you get. They either gonna tell you no, or they're gonna tell you yes, and you gotta be ready for either or. But yeah, it's just about respect. It really is about respect at the end of the day.
Zack Smith, you have brought together 3 amazing people to have on this panel, clearly.
Yeah, I can just listen.
Yeah. But I think it's because you saw that there's an issue here, and it seems like in recent years you've had a sort of lesson learned about this. I want to talk a little bit more too about what Boyce is saying when it comes to the pressure to deliver, you know, that the photographer has. It's not simply a photographer taking that picture and having it, you know, there's a sales component to it. And I think talking about how that plays out and who benefits from it is certainly part of this conversation. But to start with, can you kind of describe the impetus for you around maybe having this relationship with Juan, and after taking pictures for 15 years, what you didn't know and what you've learned now, and how we got to this point?
Yeah, and I just want to thank everybody here for coming out It's really good to see everybody here. It's an important subject that this is only the beginning. We're piggybacking off of Ryan's talk a couple of weeks ago, off of Sharice's talk a couple of weeks before that, and it's just one big conversation. And so for me, the reason why it popped in my head was that I had shot a lot of street culture when I first moved to New Orleans. It was, I couldn't get enough of it. I was out there every Sunday. I was out there. Michael P. Smith's daughter, Leslie Smith, has a story she likes to tell of waking me up, sleeping in my car outside of Tipitina's because the show was about to start because I slept there from the night before during Jazz Fest. I was seeing music 6 nights a week, Indians every Sunday, Social Aid and Pleasure Club. I see Stan and Joe here, right over there. Been knowing Prince of Wales for so long and just going hard and photographing so much, but all the while not getting as much of the story as I am now because I stepped back away from it to concentrate on my commercial work and my workshops. And I recently did a project called My Louisiana Muse, where I was documenting not only what made Louisiana artists tick, but where. I wanted to know where artists got their inspiration from, and when I kind of scaled back from shooting the streets, I just wanted to concentrate on Prince of Wales and Juan Pardo, because that way I could really concentrate on what the story was behind the bead or the fan. And then I started to concentrate really on musicians that I really, really wanted to know more about. Because when you know the story, your photographs are so much better. If you don't know the story, you're taking snapshots. And I know anybody that calls himself a photographer does not take snapshots. That's not what we do. And getting to talk to Juan on the phone about where he's inspired, why he's inspired, I got to learn that his parents are equal half of what he does now. A brilliant singer, an amazing sewing artist, and that comes from his parents. And it's a tradition that gets passed on. And you mentioned Christian Scott, and we have these amazing musical families in New Orleans where the roots of that music are so deep. These musicians aren't just playing St. James Infirmary. They're not just playing these songs you hear every day. They're playing these versions that have been rotated and skewed and just evolved to where they are now. And it's a ritual, it's a tradition. And as a photographer, I kind of had to step back and go, okay, I just took on a new responsibility to be able to tell this story in a way that made my photographs educate people instead of taking a snapshot where you didn't get the story. And through Juan, I was able to learn so much more about what was behind the artwork that he did, that it really made this project, the My Louisiana Muse project, something that seeped into my life as a photographer and other things that I did. Wanting to know more about the people I came into contact with, the musicians that I worked with on a commercial basis, and the social aid and pleasure clubs that I wanted to get involved with. Like, if I know the story, that photograph's gonna be better. So getting back to our talk, I started to see more iPhones and iPads than Indians and more cameras than culture. That's a little thing I thought of. It's pretty catchy. But it was something I looked at and I'm like, wow, okay, well, that's inevitable. In the age we're at right now, we want to document everything around us. We want to post everything online. We want to tell everybody what we're seeing. But when it comes to documenting such a rich, unique, ritual-based culture as New Orleans, and I'm talking about the music, I'm talking about the musicians, the clubs, and the Indians, that the photographers who know what they're doing and want to get the story, I feel have a greater responsibility than any other photographer in this country, maybe even the world. Just as Eric was saying about how unique this culture is here, just because that it's unique, that makes us need to do a better job. And so I see these iPhones and iPads and whatnot. And you know what? Half of them are probably family members taking pictures, and for family albums, for the iPad videos and whatnot. And that's awesome. That's the story. Talk about knowing the story. But then there's a lot of people who come in and take photographs with no intention to give back. I heard that word. That's one of my favorite words right now, to give back, with no intention. And instead of beat the dead horse and ride the elephant around the room, it's like, okay, well, how do we take a step in the right direction and create a new culture of collaboration by educating photographers? We all said this at one point: respect, education, responsibility. So I'm the type of person, if I'm thinking about it and talking about it, I want to tell as many people as possible, because that not only educates people around us, it's going to elevate the quality of their photographs, telling the story of the culture better. So the photography of New Orleans and the way we are seen is going to be so good. It's going to be even better. Compositional, the angle that you said, shooting from high up. You know, that I wrote that down, man. The morning glory. I can't wait for next year.
Yeah, I know.
I'm gonna carry around a ladder or something. But it's those little things that are gonna make all of our photographs better and allow us to create a relationship and make a new friend. Meet somebody you didn't know yesterday, and now you have a relationship. And there's collaboration on so many levels. So in having everybody here, it's like, well, look how many people are interested in this topic. This is amazing. So you care on many different levels, and if this is the beginning of a big talk, we can throw out some ideas on how to make it better. How culture bearers, kind of using that word to put musicians, Indians, and pleasure clubs, and anybody creating culture, how culture bearers can connect with those photographers that really care. How those photographers can connect with the culture bearers to learn the story. Nothing like that is happening right now. At least I don't think. If there is, I can't wait to learn, because there's no one place you can go to get the resources for that kind of thing. And it's like, I don't have the answers, but maybe y'all do.
I just want to add one thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the responsibilities of the photographer is in dealing with the cultural bearers is not to be a culture vulture. Understand what that means, okay? And there are a lot of culture vultures out there, believe me. And they have real cameras, not cell phones, not iPads. They have real cameras.
We've talked about what it means to have more respect, and we've talked about the need to give back and the kind of intimate relationships that are needed to start that. To take it farther, and I think that, as you said, there's people with iPads, there's people with iPhones, people could be family members, people could be voyeurs or vultures. It's hard to know what drives someone to, instead of dance, want to take a picture simply for their Facebook. But for the professional photographer, how do we start this process of giving back past just the understanding, right? You've done the work to understand more about how this culture comes along. You now have a product which you're gonna sell. You know, you may sell it to an esteemed magazine put out by Louisiana Endowment of Humanities. You may sell it in a gallery. You may, and I think this is another elephant in the room, sell it to tourism entities who are marketing this culture to people all over the world and making probably a better buck than the photographer or the culture bearer are making on it. How, as a photographer, do you start to evolve that part of the relationship as well? And I think that's open to the culture bearers as well.
One thing we can do is like Dow Edwards. Like Dow Edwards, I want Dow to be able to call me and say, look, man, my daughter's having a sweet 16 party, or she's having a birthday party. Why don't you come out and shoot it for me? Mm-hmm. Why not? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just one way that we can give back. Be on standby. I mean, if it conflicts with something, of course, we understand that. But if you're not doing anything, and Dow or wine, or somebody calls and say, hey man, would you mind coming and shoot my birthday party? You know, my son is graduating. You know, I have a christening. Anything. That's a way of giving back.
I think I'll just add real quick. I think for a lot of people who are more entrenched in the culture, like you or I or other photographers, and maybe we're more the type of people that easily approach a stranger. If we photograph someone and give a card or reach out, I think that's second nature. I think to some people it's not, and that's just the way they are, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think a lot of people don't take that natural step that maybe we do and say, hi, my name is, I want to work with you. I want to give you my business card. I mean, you're not going to stop two chiefs and say, excuse me, sir, can I give you my card? But like maybe there's someone on the periphery with the chief, with someone that, hey, I notice you're with them. You mind connecting with me maybe next week? That doesn't happen as often as I think as it should. And one idea was maybe to have a place that culture bears, and I want to keep looping in musicians here. As a photographer for Jazz Fest and French Quarter Fest for so many years, I have thousands of pictures of musicians. And being a musician myself, I know where to find them and get that to them. Not everybody does. Where is that place that Tom takes a picture of someone and says, geez, how do I get in touch with this person's management or individual? You know, maybe there's a place where he can go to connect with those people. That's just what I was going to throw in right there.
Okay.
I guess like you said, let's grab the elephant that is in the room, because you keep throwing back to it. There is a currency of finance created from the photography. And I know this is an issue that I see Cerise made it in, that I forget the way she calls it. I think it's like equal opportunity photographers.
Say it again.
Neutral and fair use.
Mutual.
Mutual and fair use photographers. Yeah, that's the terms that terminology uses for. But here's from the cultural side. Let me give you somewhat. I'm not going to say I'm responding for everybody, but let me tell you what from this side of the tracks can be done. One, what he said about having that card. Have it. The wife is there. There's usually somebody dressed in the same colors. He's in street clothes, but he got the same clothes on as the chief. That's his guy. Give him the card. There is someone there to issue that card with. And when it comes to, like I said, the elephant in the room, when we're talking finance, let me explain something to you. In our culture, and I've straddled the fence on both sides, as a musician, a performing a musician, and a Mardi Gras Indian. What happens here is we come from all different genres, lawyers, doctors, house moms, big queens, whatever. You got the full scale within our culture. It is very disheartening to a guy who watches a picture of himself sell somewhere to go into a hotel, for instance, because that's a great lick right now. There's a picture of somebody took of me in Vegas, and they just didn't know they took a picture of the wrong person. But nevertheless, what happens is, what about the guy who's really living here in New Orleans and still trying to get back on his feet, right? And he sees this photographer's gotten this check for this picture of himself. That's all of his work right there. He's probably struggling already, but the love for the culture will not let you skip making that suit. And in that process, this guy has profited from something that you could have given him some monetary compensation to at least acknowledge the fact that, hey, I'm going to profit from this photo I took of you. You know, here's something from it. Because can you imagine what that would do to a person? I mean, nobody's probably ever said it out loud. Imagine if the light bill needs to be paid, and there's this photographer that just got a $2,000-$3,000 check for your picture of you, and you're trying to figure out how you're going to keep the lights on. So when you think about it that drastically, it's not drastic, it's real. I won't point fingers, but it exists in the culture. So think about it that way when you say, oh, these guys are just oh, they want money. Man, do you know what he went through to create that suit? Do you know what it costs these days to make an Indian suit? It don't cost what it cost in the 70s, let me tell you. You know? So, and it's becoming harder to get things that we like to use. So when you do get them, it costs that much more to get them. So understand that love he has for the culture makes him do it. You can't not do it. You might could skip a year, but you can't not do it. You just can't. But that's tribal, that's cultural. And in that process, suppose you came along during that Mardi Gras season and you bumped into him and was like, hey man, here's that, I sold a picture of you, here's a little something for you. You might have just made his year. Because at that moment, he might have needed that. So when you're doing that and you're taking these pictures, if you're taking pictures for yourself and you don't plan to profit from them, that's fine. That's a whole nother thing. But if you're that freelance guy that from time to time you're gonna try to get a picture sale in, just understand what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's theft. And that's what we really hear on the panel to say so. I'm gonna just put it out there. It's theft. You just stole from this person. And you probably stole from those who he provide for in that process. You may not see it that way, but again, just imagine. You got that check, you just dropped it off in savings or wherever it went, and this guy is still trying to figure it out. It would help him out if it was just something else to know, or just the common respect to say, I profited from what you do. I understand that the photographer has the responsibility to get the photo to the platform. So yes, you should be compensated for that, and you did the work, the manual labor to get the photo. So I'm not gonna say that the photographer bears no right to it, but you have to understand that photo does not exist. It does not have the value without that guy in it that you're taking that picture of. Bottom line, you have a picture of an empty stage, and who wants that? There might be a marketplace for it. You can sell anything these days, but you're gonna sell a picture of a chief a lot quicker than an empty stage.
Right.
Let's just say that.
Well, the catch-22 to that, Juan, is that legally the photographer, if shooting pictures for fine art or documentary, doesn't need to pay them.
Right.
But the thing that I want to say is that being a photographer in New Orleans, we need to breed a culture of respect that you should start a relationship, no matter if it's not the legal right to have to pay someone. Advertising and commercial, selling a product, of course. But it should go beyond our minds. We should automatically think there has to be something to give back. What if it's an image that can promote that Indian if he's in a band, or a club for something that they're doing to promote a birthday party or an event, a fundraiser for the club. It's like photographers who really know what they're doing and are good, those pictures can be used for the person that's in them, and it doesn't have to involve money. Like there's photographers out there who spend so much money on gear and equipment and insurance and whatnot, and I hear it from a lot of people, well, I don't have to give back anything. Well, no, you don't. But there is a responsibility that you should feel respect and honor to have taken that picture, and you should give something back.
I would just like to add to this. Maybe because I've gone through this and I watched this in the music industry. But I feel like we need to catch up with the world as it's evolving. And there can be a platform, a source for footage, for media, but I really feel like this has to start with the tribes, right? It starts with them because we're not documenting anything without their approval or consent. And so if we get the tribes, or if it's even of interest to the tribes to be documented, but if they can agree on how they want to be documented, I feel like we can take a model like Uber or Airbnb, and we can have a location that is designated for licensed, approved photographers who get clearance, direct clearance from tribes, to come in and document. And there can be a location a la a Flickr. Any of you guys who use media arts, if you're using stock photography, stock media, when I edit, I use a company called Video Blocks. I feel like there can be a location where if people around the world want to pull quality footage, footage that is certified and stamped by the tribe whom they want to pull the footage from, they can pay for that footage. A portion of that footage, that fee can go directly to that tribe.
Share.
Yeah, a share can go to that
Currency
tribe,
share.
and a share can go to that artist. And it's a similar model that has taken about 10 years for the record industry to catch up with in music. But I feel like if people don't fight the inevitable, we can adapt to what's happening. And right now we live in a world, we lived in a world of cultural appropriation and exploitation, but it's so much easier now. And if we got in place, this would require education on intellectual property. So it's interesting for me, Zack, to hear what the specifics are around fine arts, because it's very different with music. But I think there's a gray area when you get into moving footage, how that works. So if some sort of licensing royalty, I remember when digital streaming first came into play, it was a really crappy royalty. It's getting better now. But if some sort of agreement could be some sort of agreement that we could come to, and then a core group, a pilot group of photographers are selected to be that first guinea pig group, and these tribes could actually see that fee, because I know we're saying like it's not about money, but it is about money, because money's being made, right? And I don't think that that money can't be dispersed better. I think that that's really what the issue is, you know? The footage that I have, if Yellow Pocahontas agreed that could go up on a platform and that they could get a share of that, and they trusted that agreement, I'm sure, you know, because that's passive income at some point. You get one person downloading a photo for $50 to use in a video, they get that, it's unlimited, you know. And I think that that's what we haven't wrapped our minds around yet as it relates to the online platform. We're not dealing in small numbers anymore. These are massive numbers, and they grow by the moment. So if you had a platform and you had somebody who could pay $50 for one photo, we really don't know. Sky's the limit. How many people would download that photo? But I think we have to try it to see, you know?
Yeah, it's
I think
definitely.
that that's the direction that I'm more so, like, how can we empower these tribes to make sure that they get that money, you know? So the conversation happens before the photographer shows up that day to shoot. Conversation has already has happened. It's like when you get your Uber driver, you know that this is not a psycho coming to pick you up. You know, they've gone through this whole process of clearance before they get to your door.
Not quite.
To pick, not quite.
I hope there's no taxi
Let me
drivers.
tell you, I've had some crazy taxi drivers too.
I'm talking about the Uber driver
But
that killed all
I'm
those
just
people.
thinking along those lines,
Yeah.
where, you know, I'm thinking ahead.
And I think that's
You know, when I
that's
traveled
something
to my last tour, when I was in Ireland, it surprised me how huge Treme was in that country. That was like, forget my album. They wanted to talk about Treme. And it just, you know, and my father was on Treme, shout out Lance Nichols. It made me realize just how loved and respected our culture is around the world. And the love and the passion that those people in Ireland, all throughout the country, spoke about this city is directly transferable into money. I could see that, you know? And for a lot of people, to them, Treme was the first real window into New Orleans. It wasn't like Mardi Gras, chest beads, all that stuff. It was like, is that how it really is? I think the world wants more of that. But I think it's up to us here at Ground Zero to decide what we want to disseminate and how we want to disseminate that information. It has to happen here.
Yeah.
Let me just say one thing, and I think we're gonna call on Sharice. We have an attorney in the room, and I just want to say that we understand public domain, but like when Sharice would ask me to come and shoot something, that's not public domain. That's a request from her. That's her right. I mean, I shot the pictures, but what I do with those pictures
Work for
have to-
hire.
Yeah.
Like a work for hire.
Well, it's not. I mean,
Where she would own it.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I'm not work. I mean, per se, not working. But she requested that I ask me would I come shoot pictures, and that's not public domain, right? So she has proprietary rights to those images. Whereas
Yeah,
in public domain, it's a little. Could you
Unless
just
she
touch on that
posts
a
to
minute?
Facebook,
Just depends on where it goes.
She can do whatever she
Yeah.
wants with
Yeah.
it.
What I would say is this, because in my day job I deal with contracts a lot, so I think this is an extremely important part to do it. We do want to turn it over to the larger group. I think we're at a point now that we are looking forward, and I think a lot of good things have just been said about how we can do that. Let's try and maintain that momentum as we move on to a larger conversation here. We have a lot of, I can see, important people in this room that have something to say. We also have a lot of people, I think, that feel like we're at a good point with this conversation. The most important thing so that this conversation keeps going is that we do make sure this documentation happens. So I would ask that Ms. Harrison, sir, if just as long as we speak from that microphone, we'll make sure we get it all, and we're going to keep it moving. So I think it's high time we hear from you, ma'am.
Well, I'm Maroon Queen Sharice Harrison Nelson, also known as Queen Reese from the Guardians of the Flying Maroon Society. Now, for me, this conversation is very deep. It is not shallow water. Because we're talking about human beings and the way they treat other human beings. At one time, it was legal to sell human beings. My grandfather, Madison, was stolen from his parents in 1820 and brought here to Louisiana and sold by Francis E. Reeves, who went on to become a U.S. congressman and later sold to Julie Eloise Trepanier, and then sold to Samuel Cone with a $200 profit for $600. That was legal. But some people said, I'm not going to sell people. That's not right to do to another human being. Everyone did not engage in that commerce. For me, when you come down to our neighborhoods, you go big game hunting to get your best shot. And then you put us on the wall like a trophy to sell us to the highest bidder. Well, it's just like those rolls. They record the name of the people who held our ancestors. You'll see many pictures, and the photographer's name is listed. They wouldn't have it any other way. But do they respect the human being? The human being who is the subject in that picture, to list their name as well? Because, as I said, it is a form of neo-urban colonialism. We work from sunup, and Chief, you amen this, spy boy, where you at? Sun up to sundown, right? Sun up to sundown, working in our quarters. And you come and you shoot us. So what I would want to say is that, yes, you have the right to do that, but what about the human right? What about doing the right thing? We don't bring our children out because our children's pictures have been, stolen and sold. But, you know, I feel like that's an invasion of their parental rights, and I don't want to be a part of that. And it's the respect. One of our children was referred to as the Emerald Queen, and I don't know if the photographer realized or not, but she referred to me when I had blue on as a Sapphire Queen. That's really an insult, but it's an insult on two levels because you don't know it's a stereotype, and also because you don't care to know my name. This is the last point I'm going to leave you with. As Chief said, we did start a fair and mutual project. We have a green paper instead of a white paper because it's about the money. And there are ways that and if you'd like a copy, we have a few. And there are ways, as Eric said, we have invited him into sacred spaces. When my father became an ancestor, he took the pictures for our funeral. There was one photographer that did not respect that. And he refused to leave and told us we don't own the culture. But as my mother said, I own my daddy. That's my daddy. And we did a book, we do exhibitions and books. And what we do is we not only provide some narrative text about the Indians, the Queens, well, this is the Queens book, but every photographer and writer who participates in this, we also list a biography and a full color picture, well, except in Eric's case, because he sent a black and white. A black and white picture of them, because it is important to acknowledge them as documenters of our culture. But again, what I say to you is if it's important for your name to be on the picture, have respect for your subject, list their name, and this is a continuing work. We started this work, us personally, started this work in 1999. We continue it. In 2014, we launched our, and if you'd like an ink pen, I have a few of them. You get paid, I get paid. Last year we released the green paper. I'm not telling y'all what we're gonna do next time because our tradition is secret, but we come in with you with, as you had, boom, boom, the big guns.
Hey, can I say something on that? Thank you, Big Queen. It's good to see you. And I think a lot of what she's saying is, we keep saying these words: respect, relationships, and the story. I mean, these words are very important in this conversation, and the non-crediting of musicians, Indians, social aid and pleasure clubs. That's wrong. Just to have the photographer's name up there is wrong. If it's about the story, it's about who's in the story. So another way, how can the photographer from Connecticut, wherever, coming in, just here for a day or two, oh my God, I happened upon a second line, took these great shots. How can that person at home across the country find out who they photographed and get that to them? Where's that one place? So I don't know where that is yet, but that's something that may help answer that.
Stan, you skipped one.
This is a very important conversation and dialogue that's taking place, because if you can look around the room, you can see that these are people that love this culture. The question is, isn't the underlying current question is about commodification and exploitation. Now, knowing Eric, I know your dad from Tremaine, and I know Zack, and I know Juan. Part of the thing is that what I have realized over the years that since I was born like Ernie Cato at Charity Hospital, is that you have some people that are the caliber like a Michael P. Smith, who I call a visual griot. That's what I call Michael P. Smith, or Sidney Bird. Someone that comes in and gives respect to the culture. And I think that what you're attempting to do here, Zack, is very important. But I think that one of the things is it's about commodification and exploitation. This is a constantly evolving culture, and that's the only thing that's really constant in this culture is change. And Sabrina, you're going to get your chance to speak. I wasn't trying to jump in front of you, but I had to get that out.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I prefer to use the term black masking Indian because the elders never refer to themselves as Mardi Gras Indians. And the first slave to escape, which was in 1722, wore feathers. And in 1724, Governor Bienville forbade the slave from wearing feathers. So it's not about Mardi Gras. It was about a revolution. Your comment about Mike Smith, and I say this very respectfully, but I think that was the beginning of the images being used for profits without a penny going to the Indians. So, and the story in the book was incorrect. It was not based on fact, not at all. We did not come from the Wild Bill show. History tells us, if you go back and look at the archive. 1722, the first slave that escaped wore feathers. So this whole conversation around Mardi Gras Indian is about branding people who began a tradition out of revolt, out of oppression. And it wasn't just about living in the swamps with Native Americans, because they had black folks here already before the enslavement of folks in this city. So when we talk about the whole tradition of wearing feathers, then we need to think about it as a movement, as a revolutionary, as a revolution. I copyright my husband's suits. My name is Sabrina Montana. Darryl Montana is my husband. And before Tootie died, we copywrote his suits. We made sure, because 9 times out of 10, you're not going to see any of Darryl's images unless somebody lets us know that they're using them. Because I make sure it is soft sculpture when those suits are not on. They've been exhibited worldwide. And the terminology is soft sculpture. So it is a piece of art. It's a piece of fine art. When it's on them, it's movement. It's sculpture. John Scott referred to it as sculpture and movement. So it is our intellectual property because it's one of a kind. And we made it. And I do get, I sat there and I listened to the conversation, and I'm seeing that the brothers and sisters that keep this tradition going are not part of this conversation. That's probably by choice and not having an interest. But their sincere desire is to be compensated, fairly compensated. Not $100 and $200 and you getting $1,500 or $2,000 for a shot. My niece, huge picture, sits in this place around the Superdome. She found out when she went to a wedding there. You know, we had someone who visited someone in New York, and it was in this huge restaurant. I politely found out who the person was, and I asked them to take my husband's picture down unless they could give me something. And I did the same thing with Christopher West, what's his name, Anthony Hardy. In the book, he used the image of Tootie. He did not consult us. So until we are able to speak for ourselves in a collective voice and say no more, because the elders would have not let that happen. Much respect for Jules Kahn, who took pictures for years upon years upon years, and they're in the historic collection. He did not make not one penny off of them. That's respect. That's respect. So before you come in with the cameras, you should have that conversation with the subject that you plan to take, whose picture you plan to take.
Agreed.
It's just called respect. Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you. Thank you.
Before Dow, you can the same. The other thing I just want to say too is, just like I always tell people about the Mardi Gras Indian culture, the Black Indian masking culture, is that just like we started out making our suits from fish scales and other different things that you found, old brooches that mom didn't have, and you know where this thing really started, is that as you guys evolve, we're also evolving too. It's just, for instance, if anyone's ever been on a movie shoot or video shoot, the first thing they tell you is you're going to go to wardrobe. And the reason you're going to go to wardrobe is because you can't have a Ralph Lauren shirt on, because that polo emblem can't be seen without the Ralph Lauren check. So I want you guys to understand something. The reason why I feel like Zack wanted me on this panel, I hide my trademark within my suit. You can't take a picture of me without seeing it. You can't find it, but it's there. And I can point it out to you in the courtroom. So please understand that as you evolve, It's my responsibility as a big chief to make sure that my culture is evolving.
There you go.
So I am going to make sure that we are educating each other on these things. So if we can't have this conversation respectfully and everyone enjoy it, it can become an issue. It can. It shouldn't go that way. That's why we're here. We're trying to create a mutual workspace for everybody to be able to enjoy and profit from the culture within itself. Because let's face it, the cat's out of the bag and money is going to transpire around New Orleans culture. He's out of the bone. You close the gate, you can tear the gate down, it's over with. So we gotta get over that part of it and figure out how do we now get in front of our own culture, take responsibility for it, and make sure that these things aren't happening. And just as Ms. Montana just said, everyone who bears, well, culture bearers aren't here and present in the room for whatever reason. But please understand that we are going to get the word out to each other in every way possible to make sure that we are protecting ourselves in this. So we are here, and I'm here representing the culture to create a dialogue for those who want to do like these people here on the panel have done and create the relationships. But if there are those, and just like we're talking about Connecticut, there's a culture vulture here in New Orleans from Connecticut, and that's why I use that. So I'm not, it's not everybody, but I can pinpoint one. But from Connecticut. There's a half-hazard
Can't wait to find out who this is.
He's a haphazard drunk.
I'm not from
But and what I'm saying is, you know, in that particular person that I'm speaking about, I watched the evolution of this culture. I saw it in its conception. And it has evolved to exactly what I knew it would. Right after Katrina showed up, couldn't make it on their own, attached themselves to the culture. I saw it coming. Approached me, didn't work. Bounced around until they found the weakest link. And it wasn't a weak link, it was just a person who happened to be real loving and open, taking advantage of that New Orleans culture. And he found one. And he stood there long enough to now run around the world and write a bio as an aficionado of rhythm within this culture. So I'm going this deep into it to let you guys know that we're not talking about a myth. It's real. And I'm here as a part of the culture to tell you that it is real. It's not, you know, something we're making up. There is money transpiring. I profit well from it. But that's because I have the know-how and the wherewithal to go forward and make sure that these things happen. But there are many who don't have the time or resources to do what I can do, and they are being taken advantage of. And what we're asking in here now is, let's not make it an issue. Let's keep the spirit of New Orleans the way it is. Let's keep this gumbo pot full of good ingredients that work together. That's what we need to do. Go ahead, Dal.
Thank you, Chief. Well, my name is Dow Edwards. I am an attorney, but I'm Spy Boy. I was a Mohawk hunter, the Somali Broad Indian tribe. And I'm saying this that when I grew up following the Indians ever since I was a little boy, and always wanted to be a part of the Indians, but never knew anybody in the culture at that point in time that I felt I could approach, right? Because that culture was always so sacred and so close-knit, and they just wouldn't let anybody into the culture, right? And I followed it for years, and finally a secretary of mine was dating a big chief, and I asked her, I said, you think I could be a Mardi Gras Indian? She said, sure. And I asked her, you think the chief gonna let me use some of his old patches? Because I was not an artist. I didn't know anything about the art, right? And she said, yeah. I met Chief Casby, Tyrone Casby of the Mohawk Hunters, and I asked him, I said, Chief, can I be Indian? And I've been following him for all my life. I always wanted to do this. I'm telling you, it's in my blood, it's in my spirit. And he said, sure. I said, you gonna let me use some of his old patches? He said, hell no. And this is just a little background. And so that was in like 1989, the year my daughter was born. And I didn't have autistic bone in my body. I said, Chief, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I mean, what y'all do is too squid. I'm just not capable. Fast forward, Katrina hit, and it looked like it was a big run on the culture of New Orleans was about to take place. You know, and as being a lawyer, I said, you know what, I got to hopefully be able to put a voice to that. You know, it's in my heart, it's in my spirit. I went back to Chief Casby and asked him, I said, can I do it? He said, are you ready to sew? I said, I'm ready to sew, Chief. I'm ready to sew, right? And that first year making that suit, right, it was such a spiritual journey. Juan talked about this year-long process and everything that goes into that suit. For an Indian that makes that suit, it's a spiritual journey. When you understand what the culture is about paying homage, right? It's not a Native American culture. It's an African culture that was transformed from Africa to New Orleans by way of the slaves that made it here and were able to carry on their culture in the city of New Orleans on Sundays like they could do nowhere else in America, and that culture survived, and the culture goes back to paying homage the same way they pay homage in Africa, right? Fast forward a little bit now. I'm at Jazz Fest. There is the Haitian Pavilion going on. There is, looking in the Haitian Pavilion, people are beading the same way the Mardi Gras Indians are beading there, right? I'm like, what is this? How are they doing the same thing we're doing? Is there a dialogue going on between Haiti and America about this, New Orleans about this? The answer was no, there wasn't a dialogue at that point in time. I walk into Congo Square and I see a statue fully beaded that's over hundreds of years old that come from the Cameroon of Africa. I bought it, brought it home, found out where it came from. It comes from the Bangwa area of Cameroon, right? And I'm telling you about this spiritual journey, man. I'm telling you about this spiritual journey. And when I look in there, the people in the Cameroon area, they pay homage to the elders that are there, right? In the dry season, because they can't do it in the rainy season. And then after they build these statues and pay homage with beating these statues and carving statues, they take them on a spiritual procession throughout the villages, and they make stops at each individual point in the village, the same way the Mardi Gras Indians go through our communities and make libation stops at these places. But there's one thing that stood out to me in reading this, right? There's a group of people they call societies there, right? There's the chief societies, and there's other societies, I don't know the name of the rest of them, but there's one society called the Spy Society. The Spy Society's job is to go out and front the chiefs at the day of the procession and to look to see if any harm is coming to them, send signals back to the chiefs, and the chiefs send signals back up, let them know which way are we going to stop, or are we going to go a different route. That's not if it was a Native American tradition, we would be called scouts. We're called spy boys, right? From the Spy Society. That's something, and it don't just happen here, it happens in Trinidad and Tobago, right? They have Indians that mass just like us there. And these are all French ports where they were allowed to carry on their traditions on Sundays, all right? Now, that spiritual journey means a lot. When we create what we create and the artistry that we create, it's about paying homage to the elders. And you want to come capture a shot, right? We create stories. Chief will tell you, tell a story for morning glory, all right? We're telling stories. We're not creating costumes. We're not going out masking for the sake of masking. We're paying homage to some Native Americans that gave us places of refuge, right? Some of us choose to do Native Americans, some of us choose to do Africans, and that's why you see different sceneries from different tribes, and each tribe does things a little bit different than the other tribe, because everybody, we don't have a rule book, right? We don't have a playbook that we play by that's written out, but it was carried down by tradition, neighborhood by neighborhood, all right? But when you come out and captured us in our suits from a legal perspective, I'll tell you this, look up the term derivative art, right? Look up the term derivative art. And when we're talking about when you are taking an image that is already in art form, and you take that art form and use that art form, and as part of your art form, you owe a royalty called a derivative art, all right? And so look at it. Now, look, there's no test cases out there yet, right?
Yeah.
There's no test cases out there. You know why? Because most lawyers won't take on the $1,500 case off of one image, right? It's not worth it to a lawyer to help out and step in and take until you get a lawyer that's really vested, who has the financial resources to do something for a cause. So no, right, you're not gonna find a lot of case law out there, right? But I guarantee you that when it's worth enough and the stakes are getting higher, right? Because, and the stakes are, I'm just saying, the stakes are getting higher now, right? And because the stakes are getting higher, someone is going to champion the cause because there might be enough financial impetus for a lawyer to get involved in that, right? And we shouldn't have to get to that. We should not have to get to that, right? I think we are at a point in time when we have enough conscientious people, photographers, conscientious Indians, and conscientious people who want this city to thrive and want the culture, want the world to see how great New Orleans is. And we need to work together, to come together, to put us on a platform such as that. Now, with respect to some of the photographers who I've opened up my home to, I know that they've had knee replacements, right? I know that they like to cook gumbo, right? I know that the wife like to go to church and do things at church on Wednesdays, right? And we got an understanding. And that understanding is this, right? I work hard to create what I do for the love of what I do, with not a purpose of profit, right? I don't do this for profit, right? And I don't think any Indian does it for profit, right? But we put a lot of financial resources, we drain our families for what we do, right? The Indians, we drain our families for what we do. And so there's many Indians, you hear stories about light bills getting paid, and some people think it's a joke, you know, or they'll put on a suit, but they won't pay their light bill, they won't pay their rent, right? But that's the love we have for African tradition of paying homage to others, okay? So what I think is an understanding, I share this with Indians, and I share this with photographers, right? The Indians gotta step up their game, right? We gotta make ourselves known to you, create a resource bank so that we can try and give the photographers an opportunity to identify. The photographers are gonna have to take advantage and help us do that. An image bank, some type of way where we can all put images up, get with each chief, each tribe, and look, you're not gonna get participation from everybody. Some people hold this thing too sacred to allow any type of profit mode to come in anyway, even though others are profiting from it, right? That's how sacred it is to them, and I understand that. But what I say though is that why should you steal from your families when there's a resource out there for you to create another work of art, right? So that you're not taking out your food off your family's table for doing what you love to do, that the suit takes care of itself, and we could get to that point. So a fair way of doing that is Indians recognize that the photographer has to do a lot of labor work, they got equipment to buy, there's a lot of work that they have to do in order to put the thing out there to market it, to get it to the point where somebody might want to be able to purchase it. And that costs money, right? That costs a lot of money. It costs a lot of time, effort, and energy in their artistry, shaping things and doing all that.
Work equity into it.
Work equity, sweat equity, you know, building up goodwill, years of equipment, and all that needs to be recognized. And the photographer needs to recognize the sweat equity at the Indian and the finances, resources. So look, say this. And this is what I'm throwing out there for food for thought. We're talking about finances and how we can do it. If a photographer can provide a gratuity for the Indian, because it's not, the Indian isn't working for you, right? But a gratuity for the Indian in the neighborhood of 25 to 30% of profit, right? Not what you have expended to put the piece out there, right? You get all of your investment back, and a 25 to 30% profit to the Indian who's the subject of that particular image, okay? And I'll tell you this, I got a phone call from a photographer about 3 weeks ago because he sent a JPEG picture to an Indian. Watch this. And the Indian started marketing the posters himself, right? He made his own posters and was selling. And he said they're selling like hotcakes, right? The photographer was upset. How could the Indian take his copyrighted image and sell them himself? Right? What is wrong with him? He doesn't understand intellectual property, dog. So you know what? I understand your point. What's good for the goose was good for the gander. Why don't you put him on the side? If you strike the 30% deal with him, I'm sure he'll strike the 30% deal with you, right? Because he spent a lot of money and effort to go and get those things framed up, put them in mats and those things, and he created his own market for them. And he should give back, and I told him, he should give back to you that same 25 to 30% that I've been talking about, right? Mm-hmm. That's fair. You know, it doesn't feel good when the shoe's on the other foot. You know? When the rabbit got that gun, you know. But that's all I want to say. And I think this is a good forum, starting the dialogue, and we need to continue on that road and that pathway.
We have time for one more question. I'm going to get final comments for our group here. Do make sure that you have signed that email list because we do want to continue this conversation with another event and also with some online content from this evening. You want to add anything?
Yeah. Mark, you'll be our last one. LJ, did you bring the banner?
Somebody reset the live feed.
Could you? Okay, and we need to reset the live feed. See if we can do that. It's not no connection. Okay, let's see if we can work that. We got somebody text Juan to reset my live feed on the
People are watching.
I love it. That's good. People are watching. LJ Goldstein, photographer. I just wanted to say a few words about the backsteppers. After Mark. Okay, after Mark. Mark Pagani.
I'm Mark Pagani. I'm a adventure travel photographer, and I live here in New Orleans. I've been here for 13 years. I also shoot events, weddings, portraits, live music, food, pretty much everything all the photographers around here shoot. We've heard from some of these amazing culture bearers, and I thought it might be nice to hear from the photographer side as well. I've been shooting Mardi Gras Indians since 2004, and it was only this year I had a gallery show for the first time, and about half of my images were Indians. And I've never ever sold an Indian image before. And in the process, the 1 month lead up to this show, I wanted to be able to, if I did sell any of these images, I wanted to be able to give back to the individuals as well as the Backstreet Cultural Museum. So I spent about a month on Facebook, pretty much every day, posting these photos saying, does anybody know these people? Does anybody know what Indian this is? Does anybody know what Indian this is? And I got a lot of response. So the majority of the Indians that I displayed, I knew the names of and I was able to contact. For the two images that I did sell, I contacted Chief Sunpai Barnes, and he's with the Backstreet Cultural Museum, and I donated a portion of those sales to the Backstreet Museum. So I guess it's, I've been to Nepal 4 times and on Everest twice, and when there was an earthquake there last year, I put together a benefit. We raised $5,000. The idea of giving back is so incredibly important. You don't just go somewhere, take those images, and do what you will with them and not give back. That's just kind of common sense. That should be happening, you know, from a legal standpoint or not, that just should be happening just ethically. My question is, I did contact Dow a couple days ago after Super Sunday. I posted an image that I shot of him, and is it your granddaughter? Grandson. And you know, people loved it. I tagged Dow in it, and we had a little conversation on Facebook, and I promised that I'd bring him a print. My question is, those kind of images, those kind of things, do the culture bearers here, the Indians, the musicians, whoever, do they feel as though that is taking away from the culture? Do they feel as though that kind of thing is being a culture vulture if I post, you know, 10 of my favorite shots from Super Sunday?
Low resolution, so people can't download them and print them.
Low resolution, people can't download and print them.
And identify people. And I would prefer to be asked if it's okay to post my picture,
right,
or the picture of children, especially because it is a parental right, it's a privacy right, and
right,
those are not my children, although they are in my group. Those are not my biological children. Thank God I don't have a 14-month-old.
Right. Well, I think that's where the, you know, what Dow was just talking about. If we can have some sort of resource where it's, you know, like I said, it took a full month for me just to get like 8 Indian names. If we can have some sort of resource,
one place to go to,
and where we can all go, so that if I do post a photo that I took, I'm not going to make a profit from it. I'm just posting for everyone to see, A, that I'm a good photographer, and it's good for my business, and B, look at these amazing Indians, look at this amazing culture that I want to share with everybody else in the world. I would like to be able to have a name. You know, I was lucky that I knew Dow through somebody else, but I don't know a lot of these people.
So, I'm gonna give you a response that you're not going to expect from this side of the fence, but that puts a serious load, and I respect what you're saying back there as well, Cherise, Queen, I'm sorry. But at the same time, that same shot you took, there was probably an iPhone behind you going, because they saw you.
There were 500 of them.
So they took the same picture and they gonna post it. So then we put that pressure on the photographer, but the same shot is out there. Now, like Queen said, there's a low resolution version. It's
yeah,
not as
hopefully it's not good.
You know, it's not as good. But what happens is, at the end of the day, the same idea, a photo, is out there. So it's one of those gray areas that I'm not going to lose sleep over, because it is impossible to just stop the posting of the pics right now. It is, because the same shot that the photographer's going to have, that iPhone's going to get it. And it'll get posted. Instagram, Snapchat, it's everywhere. It don't matter. So I would say this, to be honest with you, it's the repetitive pictures over and over and over and over and over, or someone basing the fact that I am going to be known. I haven't got my break as a photographer, so if I get a bunch of Mardi Gras Indian pictures, I know I'm gonna get on them. And so you stake your career on these sets of photos. That's where the problem comes in. So to give you a direct answer, at least from my side of the fence, if you took that picture and you posted it on Facebook or whatever like that, I'm not really losing sleep over it. If it's a kid, that's a that's a judgment issue. Me personally, like she said, I do have a daughter, and it makes my skin crawl from time to time when I do see a picture of her, but I do know I have her doing this as well. So I understand that. But there are some photos that I just wish someone would respect and not take, and that's kind of goes on to the person. And we can't police everyone in that. But I'll say this, use your better judgments as a professional photographer to say, before you hit post on that, is this respectful? Does this cross the line? And you're, at the end of the day, if it's a good photo, your conscience will allow you to sleep. It's cool.
Yeah, and I just say this too. We got to be conscious that we really want the world to know about us, right? That's where the big shots are going to come from. That's where that big payoff day is going to come from. Yeah. There's been a lot of rappers that used to give out CDs. Master P gave out millions of CDs before the fact they started making money off them. So I think we all understand that.
Yeah.
We just want to respect that when there's a dollar made off of it, right? That the Indians are included in that dialogue, right? And whether or not you're posting and you're ambassadors of the culture of New Orleans, that's wonderful. New Orleans, we want people to kind of know about our culture in a way that's respectful and not demeaning. What I don't want to see is that photograph of that Indian with his hat cocked back, right? That was totally full of spirits that day, and it's making a mockery of what we do, right? That's the photographs I think we don't want you to put out there.
And I think as you pointed out, the stakes are high. This is definitely the time to have this conversation because the demand for this culture and the money involved has inarguably never been higher. I do want to give LJ a chance, and then I do want to turn it over to the panel here. I know we have a lot more to talk about. Sure.
I'll yield 5 minutes to the lady from the Mardi Gras.
That was good parliamentary procedure.
Thank
you.
Oh my goodness. I am Haris J. Harrison, widow of Big Chief Donald Harrison Sr., mother of internationally known musician Donald Harrison Jr., and grandmother of Christian Scott, grandmother of 2 filmmakers, Brian Michael Nelson and Kyle Scott. Well, Sharice is here.
And you were also our 2016 Light Up for Literacy Award winner.
And even Eric is dear to my heart. He was there on the day that my husband's funeral celebration took place. He was our official photographer. He delivered a beautiful album to my family that didn't go through Katrina. I still have it.
Amen.
It is dear and precious to my heart. I, for the rest of my days, will cherish that. He is a dear, dear friend. He usually is at my home or somewhere around it for the fact that Sharice is now embarking upon this tradition in a very, very beautiful way to bring value. She did a documentary in 1990 where my husband is speaking and asking his family to do everything within their power to bring value to this tradition. When he came back out in 1988, after a hiatus of 20 years because we had to educate our 4 children, he came back and he named his group Guardians of the Flame. Meaning, he wanted us to take a lead role in guarding the culture. Flame is just metaphor for this beautiful culture, as Dow so beautifully stated, where it comes from. A lot of the men that were brought here of African descent as enslaved people, I don't call my ancestors slaves. They were enslaved. They came from warrior cultures because there are a lot of different stories about how our ancestors got here. Some were here before Columbus. Some, they say, were brought here because the kings in Africa gave their spoils of war, which were the warriors that fought against other tribesmen and were given to the Europeans that went over there established thousands of castles along the western coast of Africa with huge cannons that I have seen with these eyes when I traveled to Africa. When Cherise gave me a gift there, and also brought her son, who was graduating from high school there, so we could see firsthand where this tradition came from. And believe me, fellas and ladies, it was about remembrance and resistance to being enslaved here in America that we have this culture here today. It is a spiritual thing. Thank you for saying that. I never masked, but when my husband got in that realm, he was a man. And he stood every inch of ground that he stood on. He lived a man, and he died one. And I am proud to say I was married to him. He wasn't perfect. He was a piece of work. He was complicated. He was intelligent, had a high IQ, could remember everything he read over 40 books a year, brilliant. He gave me hell. And I gave him hell back. I loved him. He loved this culture. I have done everything that I possibly can to bring value to it. I gave Treme the right to use Guardians of the Flame. It was taken because the culture was imbued in Treme because of Donald Harrison Jr.'s innovative, groundbreaking record called Indian Blues. Because with the photographers and what they were doing, there's one specific that I will not call his name that has defiled the image of my husband on the internet, in exhibitions. He's selling it. He has even gone as far as to strike my grandson. He thinks he owns anyone that masks. You're his commodity. And you have no right, if you want to do something with yourself, then commodify yourself. These are his words. I have a file on him this thick. And yes, Juan, you are right. There are some Mardi Gras Indians, as they're branded as. Because when I met and married my husband, they didn't call themselves Mardi Gras. They said they were masking, because they were masking so that they could go into those neighborhoods after they would stop going to Congo Square. They went into the neighborhoods and brought this beautiful, viable culture. And photographers now, do not let them do their ritualized theater, because you're all in the way. They can't feel like men anymore. They can't feel free, because you're stopping the flow. You don't even know what you're doing. But Juan said one thing that's right. Some of the men that mask are getting smart, and they have trademarked themselves. And there are things in their suits that's trademarked. So fellas, have at it.